Film production can be a challenge in terms of time and in terms of technique and in terms of the creative process. The most important thing that the students will need is creativity and some perseverance and some problem solving. No production activity that takes place in the classroom or around the school is wasted.
We always start our junior year with sound. We find that most students don't realize that sound is more than half the image, and if we don't start with sound, we get nice-looking films with terrible sound, which means those are terrible films.
What I do with the film students when I'm setting them up before they actually construct a full narrative is I'll set them a series of challenges. Those moments of them going away and taking on a challenge and then coming back and having me critique it are really good learning moments. So the coolest shot, I'll have them do a tracking shot, a reaction shot, I'll have them do a little interview shot. And these things then lend them the understanding of when they start to construct actual stories and narratives, that they have a lexicon to work with.
The key in this is, I think, the inquiry, action, reflection cycle. Because what you're doing is really, you're allowing the students to be able to go out, ask a question, go out and inquire about it. And then finding a way that they can practically use the results of that inquiry in some kind of action and ultimately reflect on that.
I run my film course like an actual film studio. So the students come to me and from the very first product that they're making, they're in roles. They're told what those roles are and what those roles are allowed to do, and they're not allowed to step on each other's toes and allowed to transgress or take over anybody else's role. So they never know anything but working in teams.
It's common for the film teacher to be worried about what technology is required to run the course. Technology, there are two ways to look at it. If we don't have enough technology, we worry that our films will not be good enough. If we have too much technology, it becomes hugely time-consuming to be engaged with this technology. We are assessing what these students can achieve with the technology that is already available for them. The best technology does not always make the best film.
Students these days, many of them have access to some sort of device that can record, and the best way to teach them is to teach them how to tell a good story. If you can get them to tell a good story, it doesn't matter whether or not they have the best pixels or the best sound bites that they can get.
It's really about creativity, invention, inspiration, and story.
Film equipment takes up an incredible amount of time. Dealing with handing it out to students, getting it back from them, where are they leaving it in between, because you can't just leave it anywhere. We've tried to streamline that as much as possible, but it still is a lot of work.
It's really important to devise a system that you can control the lending of any equipment outside of the school grounds.
Students are enormously helpful. I mean, sometimes I get students in the film class who've come off of a film camp, and some have their own equipment and have done beautiful work, you know, with better equipment than we have in the school. So you can find help from from colleagues and from students, and you'll be surprised at what some of your colleagues know.
I often tap into my students, especially when software has just changed or there's a nuance of a new tool that is out. They will very gladly take that on and create their own set of instructions to share that with both me and the class.
The notion that the teacher is the fountain of knowledge and the expert in the classroom is becoming outdated. What I want my students to have is a vision of how their film should be, and then how they get there is part of the problem solving. My job is to empower these students to take control themselves and be the ones who bring this production to life.
There's a lot of pressure on film teachers in a busy school to ask their film students to provide a kind of service. It may be through CAS that certain tasks in service of the school, serving at events as a camera person, could be appropriate, but as a film teacher, my role is to make sure that the students are getting a fully practical, conceptual, theoretical, analytical education. So I sometimes have to say no to those things, even though I know that sometimes students want to jump ahead for CAS.
So you want to feel these
As teachers, a lot of times, one of the pitfalls we sometimes fall into is we tend to have a lot of love of feature films, and because of that, we tend to have a lot of focus on feature films. But one way or another, in this class, the maximum film that will be made for assessment is 7 minutes long, and most of the films will be shorter, say 3 minutes long, and 3-minute films and 7-minute films are not features, and they don't share many of the structural elements of features. So one of the things you really have to do is start going on YouTube, start looking for short films, start looking at how short films are paced, because what we're going to deliver for assessment and what we might be examining to learn about film language might not be quite the same thing.